All right, everybody, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for coming today. My name is Susie Taylor. I'm with Extended University, and I do appreciate you all coming here today. I honestly had no idea who might be interested in this topic, so it's cool to see this many people, and I think we'll have a good conversation today. I wanted to say a quick thank you to the sponsors of the meeting, Extended University, the Institute on Ecosystems, and Montana NSF EPSCoR. So kind of the way we'll do this today, most of this is an open conversation, as you know from the title of the meeting. There'll be some questions on every table that we'll discuss in small groups and as a larger group. But kind of to kick things off, I invited a couple of people here who have been doing a few science communications efforts on campus. There are a lot out there. One of the signature programs is the SPOT team, which the Montana Space Grant Consortium does. Thank you for being here, guys. That's really a very successful program in which students go out into the communities and schools and help students learn about space science. I know Dr. Trevor Douglas has done a very successful course in chemistry where students learn to do outreach about chemistry and then go out and do it. And I'm sure there are a lot of other examples too. And really one of the points here today is just find out what all is out there. I have not been able to find a comprehensive inventory of courses, programs, workshops on science communications. So I thought as a group we can start to develop that list. So there were a few people who wanted to be here today but could not, so we are filming. Darren Edwards is from our office. He's there in the back. So when it becomes time to present work from your table, I would ask that you come up to the mic so we can get that for the recording. Thank you. Let's see, there is a questionnaire on each table. Most of them are blue, some of them are white. I would ask that everybody fill one of those out before you leave. There's a box at the back by the cookies. And some of you heard me say you get a cookie if you fill it out. So, no. I get a cookie anyway, exactly. Okay, so our presenters today are Martha Sellers. She's with the Hughes Undergraduate Biology Program and the Institute on Ecosystems. Jamie Cornish is with Extended University. And Chris Guy is from the Ecology Department. But before we do that, I wanted to do a little exercise that's kind of fun and just see kind of where you guys are in thinking about science communications. So on your tables is a packet of papers. Grab one of those. And I'm going to show you the cheat sheet over here. Green means you strongly agree. Yellow, you somewhat agree. Orange, somewhat disagree. And red, strongly disagree. So I'm going to read a couple questions about science communications, and we're just going to kind of eyeball where everybody in the room thinks we are. Okay, does everybody have a packet? I had to move around a little bit. All right, here's the first question. Most scientists believe it's important that the public understand their work. That is decidedly mixed. Holy cow, I can't. What do you guys think? What seems to be the most? Yellows? Keep them held up. Let's see. Man, there is some of everything. Holy cow. Okay, yellow seems to dominate, so somewhat agree, but I saw some of everything. All right, here's the second question. Most scientists do a good job of explaining their work or research to a lay audience. Ooh. Tanya, you're alone green. Ouch. Okay, okay, here's the somewhat agrees over here, and lots of orange and red. Okay, that's significant, I think. Number 3, most adults in America like science. That's not a scientific question because like is not a great word to use, but I'm just interested to hear what you say. Most adults in America like science. No green? Okay, we see, okay, we got you're on the fence over there, okay, in the middle. Okay, I see lots of oranges. Somewhat disagrees, okay. Question number 4. Most adults in America have the background to understand current issues in science. Oh, goodness. No green, Tanya? Come on. No. Wow, okay, I see, man, mainly orange and red. Okay, somebody talk to me about that one. Why do you think most adults in America don't have the background to understand current issues in science? Somebody who said red.
I don't think we ever are science-driven community. We're business-driven.
Interesting. Business, we're focused on making money instead of understanding issues in science.
I think that the public gets a sound bite about science and doesn't understand what's underneath it and how complex it is.
So the public's hearing about science but doesn't have the background to understand.
And I would yellow on it because I think that we all have the background to do it if we can put it in a proper format that it can be understood.
Okay, yep. We might have the background but maybe not the context. Okay, interesting.
Or the desire, maybe.
Or the desire. We could if we wanted to understand, but we don't have the desire to do it. Interesting.
And I would say a lot of the people that matter that you need to communicate the messages to, like the politicians, they're all humanities-based. They're all lawyers, and so they have history and journalism and all that stuff on their background, but they don't have the critical thinking skills that scientists apply.
Gotcha.
So there's a disconnect there.
Yes.
I think our education system doesn't put a lot of emphasis on science, and so students and people grow up not necessarily having a focus on that.
Okay, so it goes way back to early grades. Okay, good ideas here, and we'll have a chance to talk about this some more too. I've got just a couple more questions for you here. Question number 5. And for those of you who came in late, grab a packet of papers. Your cheat sheet is up here. You're just going to hold it up and show us what you think. Number 5, I trust the media to cover scientific topics in a fair and accurate manner. Oh, you're laughing? Oh my gosh, okay. Okay, I see, oh wow. I see one yellow, somewhat agree. Are you a journalism major? No, okay. And there's lots of orange and red. Oh, and you see, here's a journalist, and she says orange and red. Okay. Question number 6. I think we have the right amount of coverage of scientific topics and issues in the media. The right amount. Again, that's a subjective statement. Okay, we've got a couple somewhat agrees. Again, I'm seeing mostly orange, couple reds. Okay.
It really depends on what kind of media you're talking about, because you can find science that's reported, you know, in like science news magazines, things like that, do a fairly good job. But if you're talking about the Bozeman Chronicle, then I would change my color, you know. So yeah. I think it's, with the internet, there's a broad spectrum now in terms of where you get your science news from.
I've even seen some absolutely hideous coverage of science issues on the PBS NewsHour, of all places. So, you know, if you can't even trust a high-quality outlet like that, then...
Yeah, that's different than the Bozeman Chronicle.
Yeah.
But even there's issues, huh? Yeah, we could probably have a whole conversation about that, too. Okay, this is the last question on the scale. Most people in Montana have a decent understanding of the research that goes on in our universities. Okay, I see 2 yellow, no greens, couple yellows, lots of red. Okay, so this is an issue that people in Montana don't know what's happening here at our universities. Okay, well, thanks for doing that. It's very interesting to see. I've done this a couple times in other settings, and you're pretty right on with what other groups have said. How many here today are students? Any students here today? Is there anybody from off campus? One student? Okay. So you might have to represent the student body of MSU. In fact, the entire state of Montana, perhaps. Okay, so mostly faculty and staff from campus. Great. Okay. I have 2 last questions. These involve prizes, so you're going to have to raise your hand when you think you know the answer. I'm going to ask you to come within 5 percentage points on this one. So raise your hand if you think you know. What percentage of Americans say they follow local news closely most of the time? Heather.
65.
I'm going to give it to you. It's 72%. And yes, I know that's not within 5, but but it can take a long time, and then I never know to tell you whether you're up or down. She wants some astronaut ice cream. Okay, here's another one. What percentage of Americans report that they are interested in new scientific discoveries?
Did you say Americans or Montanans?
Americans. Do you have a different answer if it's Montanans? Okay, I saw somebody raise the hand back here.
50%.
I'll give you a clue. It's higher than 50%. Elizabeth. It is higher than that.
80.
It's higher than that. Clayne.
I'll go to 92.
It is 91%, believe it or not. 41% reported they were very interested, and 50% reported they were moderately interested in new scientific discoveries. That's from NSF. And you win an astronaut ice cream. You guys are good at this. I'm going to do one more prize question. Okay.
NSF did that study. I think the results might be biased.
Oh, are you saying the NSF is biased in their statistical data collection? That's another conversation. Okay, what percentage of Americans support government funding of basic research?
Is this NSF funded again?
This is NSF survey.
90%.
It's lower than that.
85?
It's 82%. Good job. There you go. All right, well, thanks for doing that exercise. I think it's fun just to see kind of where we're all coming from and thinking about science communications. So next we'll hear from a couple of our presenters. They'll just talk for a couple of minutes and tell you about some of the work that they've been doing in science communications here on campus. And again, if you came in late, I would ask everybody to fill out one of the blue questionnaires on your table. I think on some questionnaires or tables they ended up being white, but in most cases they're blue. If you'd fill one out before you leave today, that would be great. All right, first up is Martha Sellers. She's with the Institute on Ecosystems and Hughes Undergraduate Biology Program.
Hello, is that loud enough or slow enough? Thanks for inviting me, even though you had nothing to do with that, Susie. I have two jobs, Hughes Undergraduate Biology and Institute on Ecosystems. Most of the science communication work I've done has been at Hughes, so I'm going to talk about that primarily. We are funded by the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. We are reaching out to students who have a biomedical interest, but we're very broad in what that means. And we tend to support students in really all sciences across campus and many of the engineering areas, nutrition, et cetera. So a pretty broad base of students that we're interested in. We have a summer and an academic year research support program. Summer program is similar to all the RUs and undergraduate research programs across campus, 10 weeks. They get time in a lab. They do some things out of the lab, but primarily they're getting an experience in a research lab. The academic experience includes continuing the research program that they started, and then also there's an outreach requirement. And I do want to say that I'm thrilled that one of our past students is in the room, and since she said she was the only student in the room, you all know who she is. So she's more than capable of being here as the voice for all the science students in Montana. In both of those programs, we meet weekly to talk about science, and so one of the things I think that's going to come up today is the breadth of things that one can say are science communication activities. And what we do is spend a lot of time talking about, in the summer program, we start with the basics and spend a lot of time talking about how to craft their message. So these are students who are doing research and are interested in research and are spending a whole lot of time in school classrooms learning languages that none of the rest of us understand who aren't in science. And so it's a really good time to grab them and keep them from forgetting how to talk to people who aren't in science. So we spend a lot of time having them craft a message for their peers, a message for a very science-based audience, a message for fourth graders, other kinds of messages. And those are everything from introducing their research to having a more in-depth conversation or doing a full presentation. We also discuss science, and that's, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more when I talk about the academic year, but our interest is in having the students just talk about science that isn't theirs. So science that is not their research program. So they're getting into the habit of exploring what's out there and figuring out how to talk about it and understanding it and conveying it to other people outside of the confidence level they may have in their own research area. We work very closely with them on posters and presentations, and we do that in order to help them create products that can still be understood by people outside of their discipline. Our greatest challenge there is the research mentors are often very concerned that Kylie and I are helping the students dumb down their research, so that's a constant conversation we're having. It's a term that makes me upset. Is that an okay word? I am concerned about any time we say by making something accessible to more people, we're dumbing it down. That just, I'm not okay with that. So we spend a lot of time working on that as well, with both the students and the mentors. And then while we're doing that with the posters and presentations, obviously those are different audiences. So they're getting practice in talking about their research on their poster at a higher science level than maybe their presentation would be. So they're getting lots of experiences using the same materials, but creating different ways to share that information. The academic year program is much more robust. As I said, they continue their research and they also have to do outreach. And in our case, they have to create an outreach program. I fully support getting science students to events where they are communicating with students. They come to the event, they help with it. I think that's a very, very important step. But in our case, they have to actually create the program themselves. So they get a lot of experience figuring out who they want to reach out to, what would be an appropriate way to reach out to that audience. And I can say in the 4 years we've been doing this that every single one of them created great programs and at some point feels like they failed because those programs never work out the way you think. So by the end of the semester, they generally don't feel that way anymore because they've had to work through the challenges and things that they see as failures. We don't. We look at that as the learning curve. But they've spent a lot of time redoing things and trying again and talking to their audience again to see what the audience needs. So a lot of back and forth to learn how to reach out. And we have found that to be extremely valuable, but all of our reviews from the students have said that's one of two things in the program that are the greatest thing for them to have to do because it's so hard and so challenging, but by the time it's over, they really have the confidence to go out there and build that kind of program. We work again with them on updated posters and presentations, so kind of at a higher level, and they're also required to go to a conference and present their work to a larger audience, not just the local audiences we have here. In that same academic year program, we do a seminar in the spring. It's not a seminar, it's a discussion course. There's just no good term for this. We move on from the summer piece of crafting your message and we go more in depth into how do you craft your message for even greater audiences or different audiences. How do you craft different kinds of messages? How do you do it on the web? How do you do it through social media and that kind of thing? So we spend some more time kind of expanding that crafting your message piece. And then they have discussions after the first 2 weeks. For the rest of the semester, they discuss science each week. And this has, over the 3 years we've been doing this part, it's morphed quite a bit. We originally started with more safe topics. And by that I mean things that weren't too controversial. They were in the news, but they weren't too controversial. And then we moved to picking topics, letting them pick the topics. So the class picks the topic for the year, and then Kylie and I find the materials to go along with that. And we will dig into the economic and social and cultural and political and religious aspects, impacts, ramifications of whatever that science topic is. So what they're learning there is essentially how to look at science from outside of science, looking at it from the perspectives of the people who it's impacting. And we have fantastic conversations. And we have a whole lot of students who say, well, it's science and it has to happen and who cares what they think. But by the end of the semester, we're really having some pretty rich conversations about, you know, how do you reach out to an audience that absolutely disagrees with you in every way or somewhat disagrees with you or that kind of thing. So a lot of discussion there. That's about it for that. Present both research. Oh, and then for the academic year program, they have to present research and outreach again at the end, and they do that here on campus during the undergraduate scholars program. Ultimately, I'd love to see us have an undergraduate scholars program type presentation day for outreach rather than just for science. So that's my one thing that I really hope for. The Institute on Ecosystems has only been around for 14 months, so we haven't done as much there as we have in the Hughes program. We also have terrific partners in that area, Extended University, Susie and Jamie, so a lot of the things that that would fall under that, under the IOE are really theirs to tell. But last April, we did do a set of 3 seminars, presentations. Some of you may have been at that here in the sub. And it was about communicating research findings. And we had Jeff Welsh from Greater Yellowstone Coalition, and Tracy Ellig and Susie Taylor came in and talked about sharing research findings in different aspects. So IOE has summer interns, which will be similar to the summer program. We have graduate fellows, et cetera. We've started having them create their own outreach programs, that kind of thing. Some of the same things I'm doing at Hughes we're starting to do in the IOE, but it's pretty fresh, so we don't really have anything to report on there. And that's it. Okay.
So I'm Chris Guy. I'm in the Department of Ecology, and I'm going to talk about a specific class that we have now that's a required class for all our graduate students. It's Communication and Ecological Sciences, so it's a very narrow class in terms of requiring it for our graduate students in the department. And really the idea of the class is to gain experience in different presentation styles. And I use the word that I teach it loosely because we only talk for the first 4 weeks, and then the students do the presentations and do the rest of the work. We feel like it's important to get them up there and practicing. You know, the more you practice, the better you get at it then instead of us lecturing to them. So really the course objectives are to develop a variety of different communication styles. So as we saw with the survey here, and if you dig into the literature, scientists do a terrible job of communicating to the lay audience, and we have a couple presentations that we try and tailor that, or kind of force them to kind of take their science that they're working on and communicate to the lay audience. And so gain experience. And then one of the other reasons for making this a required course in our department for graduate students is we have a lot of sub-disciplines in the Department of Ecology, and we want these cohorts of students to mix and get together and sometimes work as groups. For example, somebody might be working on a fisheries project is going to work with somebody in plants and get them to work with one another. So we have a variety of presentations this semester because the class is so full. We've had to scale it down to 10-minute presentations, and this occurs on Thursdays from 3:30 to 5. This is our normal, was our normal Department of Ecology seminar slot. So this course is only taught in spring semesters, and so this class replaces our department seminar slot. So it's open to all the faculty and the public to come view these presentations. So that puts dials up the heat a little bit on the students. And then in the fall semesters, we have our invited speakers for our seminar series. So they have to give a 10-minute presentation on like a professional paper presentation, and in this case, they would pick a paper or two. They would dive into that. It would be math, graphs, all those kinds of things that you would see at a professional type presentation. So we want to give them the experience of that. So we've had to, like I said, dial it down to 10 minutes because of all the students we have this semester. Then they have a 10-minute presentation that they give on their thesis or dissertation topic, and they can't use any electronics, any visual aids or anything like that. And we have to get them up to the board, drawing. Last spring semester was our first semester of doing this, and that was very interesting. We saw a lot of students struggle, but at the end of the class, we had a dialogue with the students about what worked and what didn't work, and they loved the opportunity to do something without PowerPoint. And you can see the difference in the ways people communicate. When PowerPoint's up, you can see the ones that are very comfortable hiding behind kind of the slides and the pretty pictures. And then when it came to, you know, the lights are on and you have the board, they would crash. And you had students that would go the other way. So that was fun. And then this semester, Pekochka, you're going to hear about that in just a second. We're going to have the students give Pekochka talks, which is 20 slides, 20 seconds per slide. So you have 6 minutes and 40 seconds, and those slides switch automatically. And I went to the workshop on that, and we had to give one of those, and I got to tell you, that was a hell of a lot of work. And you're deathly paranoid that you're going to get behind the next slide, and so you're panicked. And I was actually reading some of my notes. I mean, but
the beauty of that is, again, getting these students to think about presenting their material, and in this case it has to be for a lay audience because you can't dive into a complex graph in 20 seconds. So it's the lay audience talk, and it forces them to take all this information and boil it down to what's important. Why is it important for the audience out there? So that's going to be very exciting. And we had our first class, and I said, do not wait till the day before to put that thing together. That's and then on the last day, we have kind of a pizza party and talk about the class, and they have to give 30-second research quotes using new media. So it's like 90-second naturalist, if you've ever heard of that on NPR. And so those are very interesting. And last semester that we taught it, they did really fun, some fun things. Some of them put a little bird chirping in, just like Thane Maynard does in the 90-second naturalist. So it's a fair amount of work, but we think it's going well. The students liked it. We have one guest speaker that comes in. Like I said, we have 4 lectures this semester. I give examples of presentations. It's co-taught by Dr. Molly Webb. She gives a bad 10-minute presentation, does everything bad. We play bad presentation bingo. So there's this card with all these bad things, like colors are bad, you know, and so we do that. And then we bring in Tom Dixon from Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. He's the editor of Montana Outdoors. I don't know if you're familiar with that magazine or not. It's a magazine put out by Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And he is unbelievable when he comes and talks about how bad scientists are at communicating to the public, and how he works with his scientists and his agency, and he'll get a report from them or a paper from them, and how he has to fix that to get it out to the public. And so he does a really good job, and the students really like that. So that's where we're at with this class, and it's going well, and we're continuing to tweak it a little bit to meet everybody's needs.
I have a question. Can you say your name again?
Chris Guy.
Chris Guy?
Yep.
And are you willing to like help other departments get this kind of required graduate course also? Because I think every department should be doing that. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I think that would be fun, and we talked a little bit about it, Susie and Jamie and I, the first time we met, about could we have something like this campus-wide, and I think that would be very difficult. But if other departments did this, we could, the folks that are kind of running that class could work together to try and make them a little bit similar. Would be really, really neat. So I'd be willing to do that. Molly and I'd be willing to help. And if you want to come sit in on some presentations, you know, it's Thursdays, 3:30, and Lewis, 304.
I'm Jamie Cornish from Extended University, and as you heard, we just ran, we do all kinds of science outreach, but we recently ran this Pachachka workshop, which is impossible to say, so I'm going to say PK from now on. But it was a bit of a risk. It's a real cultural phenomenon. It's taken off internationally, and we weren't quite sure if anybody was going to be interested in this. We ran it. We had a nice mix of researchers, students, faculty, but we didn't have a huge turnout. And I think one of the real benefits of that class was that it really got people to think in a different way and forced them to communicate in this very rigid set of rules, the 20 seconds, 20 slide thing, and it really got people looking at their information in a whole different way. The real downside is it's a tremendous amount of work. So we may offer that again in the future, but obviously I feel like it was a huge success because Chris has taken it on in his class now, but watch for that in the future. Susie.
Thanks. I see that Tony Hartshorn is here too. Tony is also a graduate of the PK workshop.
Survived.
Yes, a survivor is probably a better way to say it than a graduate. But he did a great talk and would be another good person to talk to you. I just want to tell you about a program I'm involved with really briefly, and then we'll get on to our table discussion questions. A couple of years ago, our department worked with the Montana Space Grant Consortium to develop a Communicating Science to the Public workshop series for undergraduate and graduate students. This was by competitive application to be part of the group. We met at noon for, was it 10 time? It was 8 or 10 weeks, and it was based on guest speakers. So every lunch for those weeks, they would listen to a different guest speaker from design, science writing, the media, social media, and it was a great experience for those students. The one meaningful piece of feedback we learned from that is that they love to hear about other people doing science communications, but they really wanted to do it and get the feedback. So I've kind of taken that with me. As you've heard about some of the other programs, it's about doing it and getting feedback. So for the past 2 years, I've taught a course called Communicating Astrobiology to the Public. It's in conjunction with another course taught by Dr. John Peters. He teaches astrobiology, and so they're learning a new subject. Meanwhile, in my section, which is 1 credit, they're learning to communicate about astrobiology. So it's been a nice mix as they're learning a new topic and then figuring out how to share that with other people. In the first year, it was mandatory, and some of the students were quite resentful, actually, that we made them do these communications exercises. In the second year, we made it optional. We did not have everybody participate, but the ones who were there were much more into it, and they actually did some great work. So if you'd like to hear more about that, I'll stick around. I'd be happy to tell you about it. Okay, so next we'll move on to our open conversation part. On each table, there's a set of green questions. I think there's 2 copies in case people want to look. What I will do is assign each table a question. I'd like you to spend maybe about 10 minutes discussing that question. If you finish that question, just move on to the next consecutive question. That way we have at least 1 table working on every question. If you finish that one and there's one you're really fascinated with as a group, go ahead and look at that one. At the end, at about, say, 12:40, I will ask a representative from each table to come up and tell us what you discussed at your table. I will also like to collect those, so if you could take kind of nice notes, we'll keep them as part of the record of the meeting. Okay? So let's just go like this. This table will be question 1, question 2, there at Clayton's table, question 3, question 4. You guys will have question 5. Okay, I think we're going to wrap up just so we have time to hear back from everybody. What do the elementary teachers do? Like this? Oh no, they do this. Oh yeah. Right, and then everybody. Oh, thank you. Thank you, informal educators. You know what to do. There we go. Excellent. It works. Okay. So why don't we just go ahead and we'll start with table 1. Let's take about 10 minutes to hear the reports, and that will give us a little bit of time at the very end to talk about any big questions that we all want to talk about. So unfortunately, that means you're going to have to go pretty fast, but I think you can do it. It's an exercise in quick communications. Okay, table 1, please come up and tell us your question and what you talked about. Thank you.
Our question was, what are the best formats, schedules, and delivery methods for science communication training, and what are some of the barriers to each for faculty and staff and for students? For faculty and staff, we liked Chris's ideas of bringing in experts to show you what you're doing wrong, because faculty do everything right. So if they can see what they're doing wrong or have a different perspective as to what a lay audience absorbs, then that gives them a door to go down a different path. And practicing with a real audience, we like the Pikachu. We like the PK because you're forced to boil your research down and give it to somebody who doesn't know what you're talking about, and doing that hands-on and putting in the work and getting it done. And giving faculty a carrot, some reason to want to present their work to a different audience, whether it's the NSF guidelines of having to, the broader impacts and whatnot, just broadening that discussion of what those carrots might be. We didn't have any super great ideas other than NSF. For students, there's a barrier of what do faculty don't want to listen to them give a lay presentation. So how do we engage the faculty to listen to the students give their lay presentations? And again, we really like the ecology department class and how that runs, and that's a really good delivery method, and forces, because it's required, every student has to take it, whereas in the astrobiology class, the kids who take the seminar are already interested in communicating science. So forcing the students to do this model, I think, is really, really good. Do we have anything else?
Thanks, Heather. Okay, table 2.
After deciding we could not solve global warming, we decided to focus more on the question here. And ours was on science communications related topics, what are most important to faculty and staff. And we determined that the first thing is to identify the target audience, because it will be completely different for each audience. And I think sometimes students and faculty want to work toward the same audience each time, and that is really critical that they identify at that point in time who they're trying to reach. Then developing a clear and concise key message for that particular audience. And after they've determined that, then determine the format that is most appropriate, whether it is a paper, a presentation, a video, a web page, something like that. Don't just think that all formats are going to work for each one of the messages.
Did you guys hit on another question too?
We did not.
Yeah, okay, thank you. All right, and table 3.
All right, we had the third question, which was, what are the ways in which students who are interested in science communication can practice their skills? And then following that, what more can we do to help with this? We broke this down into 2 groups of students, undergraduate and graduate, because we think the opportunities for both of those are different. So for undergraduate, we have a list of things that they can do to practice, which are professional development opportunities, conference opportunities, which could be boosted by supplying the funding for that, because a lot of students don't get the opportunities to go to conferences because there isn't the funding. Another idea we had was student competitions, like design competitions for engineering projects and such. How could we boost that? Maybe advertise about ones that are around more, or also create one here at MSU to get students in different departments interested in competing to reach an end goal. There are other programs, service learning, part of a course in the earth science department, I believe, and then undergraduate scholars programs. They fund students to do research on campus, and maybe a facet of that is presenting at that colloquium at the end of the spring. The last one we had was SPOT for undergraduate students, and I think the way that we could develop this is use SPOT for a model for other subjects as well. I have a lot of friends who are a part of SPOT and have suggested, hey, maybe you should do this, but I don't have that big of a physics and space knowledge background, so I wouldn't really feel comfortable going out and talking about that to a group of students. Whereas if we had something in the biology department that follows their setup, you could get a lot of undergraduate students involved in going out to schools and doing outreach like that.
Did you call it SPOT?
Yeah. I'm not sure what the acronym stands for.
It's our space public outreach team. It's a Montana Space Grant program.
All right. And for the graduate students, we kind of discussed the opportunity for formal classes, such as the one that was presented to us here. Professional development for students within their own department, the same kind of thing, making a poster for their departmental colloquium, going to conferences, international conferences, national conferences. In the Earth Department, we discussed this congressional fellowship opportunity, Science on the Hill. I don't know a lot about that, but the same kind of advertise more and get that out to the students, as opposed to keeping it in this like departmental niche where very few people know about it. And then as a facet of their funding, they might be able to do some outreach, and it might be required by their grant. That's all we have.
Table 4.
Okay, we had question 4. Who are potential partners on and off campus as we undertake more science communication training? And we were a little stumped, actually. We talked about MSU News Service and other programs like EPSCoR that are offering already. Museum of the Rockies, potentially the Bozeman Community Group on doing the PK. That as sort of locally available things, but I think this is probably where it would be good to have some compilation of resources that are available to encourage, hey, there are opportunities for getting training. We also talked about grant or pieces of grants that contribute to outreach and training. And this led us into the barrier issue, which is that many grants will provide money for outreach and training, but once the grant is done, so is the program. And speaking from working at the Center for Biofilm Engineering, our main NSF program grant ended 11 years ago. So everything that we try to do is built into our program without additional resources. What really helps us is that we have an industrial program. The students have to communicate with industrial people. For instance, that's one of the outreach communication skills that they develop, and we figure that helps them get a better set of skills for employability also. But it's a huge challenge, and we also kind of moved into the territory of what are the pitfalls of working really hard to communicate broadly. Where do you go too far in being, going for the sexy thing, shocking, new, breakthrough, and that we have to also teach students not to just get attention, right? Oversimplifying.
Thanks, Pat. And table 5.
Hi there. I'm Katherine Watson. For those of you who don't know me, I work at the Energy Research Institute. And our group worked on question number 5, dealing with resources that are available. And there's kind of the regular low-hanging fruits of the internet and the various games and wiki and things like that that are available in blogs. Also, scholarly articles and trade publications that might be available. And also looking not just at science articles that can be translated into more generally into text more available to the public, but the other way around too. So journalism articles that could be applied to science and things like that. So that kind of bi-directional flow. We also talked a lot about the value of relationships, which is kind of overlapping with Table 4's question. A lot because as communicators, especially in my department, we're trained not to ever speak off the record because you never know when it's going to be repeated. And the value of having a confidant that you can really genuinely speak off the record to can be invaluable. Another resource that we talked about was maybe something that we already have available on campus and just getting the word out that that's out there. And so not necessarily creating something new, but getting more access to the stuff that's already available, such as MSU News, different programs that are available on campus, and then also in the community, such as the Small Business Association, maybe they have some marketing materials, Chamber of Commerce, Communications Department, things like this. Also, better access to other hats that some of us might wear. For example, we have someone at our department that sits on a National Outreach Working Group board, and that person can bring back the tools and the trainings they get through that board experience and bring it back to campus. That's what we have.
Thanks, Katherine. Did anybody have time to tackle 6 or 7? I forget what those questions were. 6 was Oh, the interdisciplinary question. I think that one could be pretty fascinating, actually. I think there could be great marriages on campus between students who write and students who are doing engineering, film, space science. There's all kinds of great stuff there. And then question 7 was basically about how do we share what we're doing with other universities, tribal colleges, community colleges in Montana. So I would encourage you to kind of think about those. We are real close to 1 o'clock. I know some people need to get moving. We have the room for a little bit after that if you want to stay and just chat with people. We have plenty of coffee and cookies and everything. Once again, I would ask you to fill out one of the blue questionnaires, or in rare cases white. That allows us to keep in contact with you. I did want to discuss as a group one of the questions that's on the questionnaire, which is kind of what do we do next? How do we keep this conversation going? I appreciate that all of you are interested in the topic, but it's easy to have a meeting like this and then kind of not get, we have lots of ideas. We've talked about the barriers. What do we do next? Anybody have some thoughts on that?